My sister claimed my late husband's child to steal my house. She had no idea what was coming. If you are watching this from somewhere where family drama hits close to home, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear this story through to the end. Because when betrayal comes from your own blood, it doesn't just break you, it changes you forever. My name is Bridget. I'm 34 years old, and 3 months ago, I became a widow. The word still feels strange on my tongue, like it belongs to someone else, some older woman draped in black lace from another century. Not me, not the woman who once imagined growing old side by side with Adam, the man who had been my husband, my partner, my anchor for 11 years. Adam's death came like a thief in the night, stealing every trace of normalcy from my life. One morning, he kissed me goodbye with a smile, promising to call after his meeting, and by lunchtime, he was gone. A sudden brain aneurysm at just 36. One phone call, and the life I had carefully built crumbled into ash. The weeks after his funeral were a blur. People came and went. Casseroles piled up in my fridge. Sympathy cards filled baskets in my hallway, but nothing touched the hollow space inside me. Nights were the hardest. I'd reach across the bed instinctively, searching for his warmth, his steady breathing, and find only a cold stretch of sheet. So when my mother called, insisting I attend my nephew's first birthday party just days after burying my husband, I wanted to scream. How could I plaster on a smile for balloons and cake when my world had ended? But my mother's words echoed Adam's own. Family comes first. That's how I found myself, still swollen-eyed from crying, pulling up outside Cassandra's small rental home on the edge of town. A gift wrapped in cheerful paper sat on the passenger seat, mocking my mood. I took a deep breath, wiped at the streaked mascara under my eyes, and forced myself to step inside. The house was buzzing with chatter, children squealing, paper plates bending under piles of food. Streamers hung crookedly, and the smell of frosted cupcakes clung to the air. I smiled mechanically, hugged a few relatives, and found a quiet corner to hide in. I thought the hardest part of the day would be pretending to be okay, but I was wrong. Halfway through the party, Cassandra clinked her glass for attention. She looked radiant, her dark hair curled perfectly, a dramatic flare in her every gesture as she lifted Lucas onto her hip. My nephew, soft blonde curls, blue eyes that looked far too familiar, clapped his tiny hands while everyone turned to her. "Thank you all for being here today," Cassandra began, voice trembling as if she were about to give a heartfelt speech. "There's something important I need to share. Something that will change everything." I felt my stomach twist. Cassandra loved being the center of attention, but her tone was different, heavier, calculated. She took a breath and smiled faintly. "Lucas isn't just my son. He's Adam's child." The room went silent. Cups froze halfway to mouths. My own breath caught in my throat. And then she held up a folded document, the kind of paper that carries weight in courtrooms. "Adam knew," she said dramatically, "and he left a will. According to his wishes, I am entitled to half of Bridget's house. After all, my son deserves his father's inheritance." A murmur of shock rippled through the family. My mother gasped. My father frowned, trying to process. All eyes turned to me, the widow, as if waiting for me to collapse under the weight of this revelation. But I didn't. I smiled. Just slightly. Just enough to confuse them. Because while everyone else was reeling from Cassandra's claim, I was remembering Adam's last words to me, his small, knowing actions, the secrets he left behind that only I knew. What Cassandra had no idea of, and what made me choke back laughter instead of tears, was that Adam had already prepared for this. And the game she thought she was winning? It was about to destroy her. When I think about the storm my life has become, I can't help but return to the day it all began. The day I met Adam. If you've ever felt that spark, that instant connection that makes the rest of the world fade into background noise, then you'll understand what I mean. It was 12 years ago, on a crisp October evening in Boston. The leaves painted the sidewalks in burnt oranges and deep reds, and I was volunteering at a charity auction to benefit children with cancer. I'd been helping set up silent auction tables all day, arranging gift baskets and polishing wine bottles until my hands smelled like lemon cleaner. And then there was the painting, a watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset. Rich purples bleeding into fiery orange, the harbor glistening beneath the fading light. I'd been stealing glances at it all evening, my heart tugging toward it as though it held some secret message meant for me. Of course, it was far beyond what I could afford. I was 22 then, just getting started in interior design, still renting a small apartment with paint peeling off the bathroom tiles. But when the bidding started, I lingered nearby, listening, watching the numbers climb. $200, $500, $1,200. And then, one final voice cut through the room. Confident, smooth. $2,500. Silence followed. No one dared go higher. I turned to see who the man was. Tall, dark suit that fit him perfectly, the kind of posture that suggested success, but the kind of smile that suggested warmth.
Adam.
When the auctioneer declared him the winner, Adam didn't look triumphant. He looked satisfied, as though he'd accomplished exactly what he came for. And then he walked toward me. I must have looked confused, standing there in my black volunteer dress with tired eyes. But he handed me the painting as though it belonged to me all along. "I noticed you looking at this all night," he said, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners with a kind of smile that could melt steel. "I think it should be yours." I stammered, shocked. I can't accept this, You can," he said gently, pressing it into my hands. "And you will." That was Adam. Thoughtful, observant, generous to a fault. We spoke the rest of the night. The hours flew by in laughter and curiosity. He was a corporate attorney, already climbing the ladder at his firm, but what struck me wasn't his achievements, it was how he treated everyone around him. He remembered the caterer's name. He asked the janitor if he'd eaten yet. He leaned into conversations like he actually cared, not like he was waiting for his turn to speak. The next evening, he asked me to dinner. I almost said no, it all felt too fast, too much. But something inside me said yes. And when I walked into that little seafood restaurant by the harbor, candles flickering against the glass windows, I felt like I was stepping into a story I already knew the ending to. We talked about everything. Dreams, fears, childhood embarrassments. He told me about his mother, who raised him single-handedly after his father left, and how that shaped his determination never to abandon those he loved. I told him about my passion for design, how colors and spaces felt alive to me, like puzzle pieces waiting to be put together. That night, walking back along the harbor, Adam reached for my hand. My heart thundered in my chest, but it felt right. Effortless, like two puzzle pieces clicking together. 8 months later, on a chilly June evening, he proposed. Right there on the harbor, the skyline behind us, the same skyline from the painting that brought us together. He got down on one knee, his voice trembling just slightly, and asked me to be his forever. I said yes through tears. We were married the following spring, in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Cassandra, of course, was my maid of honor. Though even on my happiest day, I felt that faint shadow of envy in her gaze. Still, I ignored it, because when I looked at Adam, nothing else mattered. Shortly after our first anniversary, we took a leap of faith and bought our dream home, a Victorian townhouse in Beacon Hill. It was old, in desperate need of renovations, but it had high ceilings, fireplaces with carved mantels, and a little garden out back where I pictured future children playing. The price tag? $800,000. A terrifying number, but Adam had just made partner, and I was building a reputation with wealthy clients. Together, we decided to risk it. And for a while, it was perfect. But perfection has a way of unraveling. Because while we built our careers and our home, one thing refused to fall into place. Children. We charted, we tracked, we prayed. We went through tests, procedures, and 4 rounds of IVF. Each one ended the same way, in heartbreak. I still remember the last attempt. The sterile smell of the clinic, the nurse's sympathetic smile, the silent drive home where Adam reached for my hand, but said nothing. That night, sitting on our porch swing, He turned to me and whispered, "We can still have a beautiful life, Bridget. You and me, that's enough." And I believed him. So we shifted. We traveled. We renovated the house room by room until it gleamed with life. Adam supported me when I launched my own interior design firm, and we celebrated each small victory like it was a miracle. Our life was full. Not the life we once imagined, but one built on resilience, love, and the determination to choose joy despite disappointment. But what I didn't realize then, what I couldn't see through the glow of our love, was the shadow waiting on the edges. A shadow named Cassandra. Every family has its golden child and its storm. I was the golden one, the planner, the dreamer, the achiever. Cassandra was the storm. She was my younger sister by 4 years, but sometimes it felt like decades separated us. While I was focused on design school, internships, and carefully building my career, Cassandra was chasing thrills. One semester in college, another dropped halfway. One job as a receptionist, another as a waitress, none lasting longer than a few months. She lived on adrenaline, late nights, whirlwind romances, broken promises. And yet, despite her recklessness, people were drawn to her. Cassandra was beautiful in that dangerous way that made men lean in closer and women instinctively pull back. Dark hair that fell in careless waves, eyes that seemed to challenge the world, a laugh that could fill a room. She knew how to use it, too. Charm was her weapon, and she wielded it with precision. Growing up, I felt the sharp edge of her jealousy often. If I won an art competition, Cassandra suddenly wanted to be an artist. If I got praise for my grades, Cassandra acted out until the spotlight shifted back to her. It was exhausting, but I learned to live with it, to tell myself she was just young, just insecure. But Cassandra never grew out of it. When I met Adam, her behavior sharpened. Suddenly, she was interested in law students. She even flirted with Adam the first time I brought him to meet the family, leaning too close, laughing too loudly. I brushed it off, embarrassed for her. Certain Adam saw right through it. And he did. He only had eyes for me. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cassandra wasn't celebrating my happiness. She was competing with it. When Adam and I bought our house, stretching every penny to make it work, Cassandra whined for months about her own tiny apartment, fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. And when they didn't, she sulked like a child denied candy. Adam always told me to be patient with her. "She's your only sister, Bridget." He'd remind me gently. Family is important. So I tried. I kept her close, invited her into my home, shared pieces of my life with her, even when I suspected she only came around to compare, to measure how much she had versus how much I had. Then came Tyler. Tyler was the kind of man my parents warned her about. A bartender with a past littered with tattoos and reckless choices. He rode a motorcycle, drank too much, and carried himself with the cocky swagger of someone who had little but acted like he had everything. Our parents disapproved, of course, but Cassandra thrived on that. Their disapproval was fuel for her rebellion. Their relationship was a storm, passionate, chaotic, loud. They fought in public, broke up dramatically, then reunited even more dramatically. To me, it looked toxic. To Cassandra, it looked like love. Then one Thanksgiving, Cassandra made her announcement. We were all gathered around the dining table, carving turkey, sipping wine, when she tapped her glass and declared through theatrical tears that she was pregnant. Pregnant with Tyler's baby. The room fell silent. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father muttered something about responsibility, and Adam reached for my hand under the table. For me, the news hit like a knife. After years of failed IVF, years of longing, years of hearing doctors say, "I'm sorry," my sister had stumbled into the very thing I craved most. And she hadn't even tried. I smiled, of course. I congratulated her, hugged her, offered support. But inside, jealousy coiled around my ribs like a snake. Still, I was determined not to let bitterness consume me. When Lucas was born, a healthy, rosy-cheeked 8-pound miracle, I was at the hospital with flowers and a blanket I'd knitted myself. Cassandra looked overwhelmed, exhausted, and unprepared for motherhood. She cried often, called me in the middle of the night, begged me to come watch Lucas so she could rest. And I did. I fed him, rocked him, sang to him. I loved him with the fierce devotion of someone who had longed for a child of her own. Sometimes, when I cradled him, I imagined he was mine. Adam was polite with Lucas, kind even but distant. I assumed it was because the pain of our infertility was too raw, that it hurt him too much to get attached to a baby that wasn't ours. I didn't question it, but looking back, maybe I should have. Because Adam's distance wasn't just grief. It was knowledge. Knowledge of something I hadn't even begun to suspect. Knowledge that would only come crashing down on me later, at that birthday party, when Cassandra stood up with her smug little smile and declared that Lucas wasn't just her son, but Adam's. Life has a way of ending chapters without warning. One morning, Adam and I were sipping coffee in our kitchen, talking about weekend plans, and by that afternoon, he was gone. It started on a Tuesday, an ordinary, gray-skied morning in Boston. Adam sat at the breakfast table, running a hand through his dark hair as he frowned at his laptop. He had a big client meeting scheduled, one he couldn't stop talking about the night before. But something was off. "Headache," he muttered, massaging his temple. "You should stay home," I urged, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "Cancel the meeting. Just this once." He smiled, tired but still trying to reassure me. "It's just a migraine, Bridget.
I'll be fine."
You know me, stubborn as ever. He kissed my forehead, grabbed his briefcase, and headed for the door. I didn't know that would be the last time I saw him alive. By noon, I was arranging fabric samples for a client presentation when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. A voice that sounded rehearsed, clinical, detached. "Mrs. Sullivan? This is Massachusetts General Hospital. We need you to come immediately. It's about your husband." The drive there was a blur of red lights and tears I couldn't wipe away fast enough. My heart pounded with denial. Maybe he fainted. Maybe it's just dehydration. Adam was healthy, strong, barely 36 years old. This couldn't be serious. But when I arrived, the look on the doctor's face told me everything before he even spoke. A ruptured brain aneurysm. Instant. Nothing anyone could have done. The world tilted. The floor felt unsteady. I clung to the wall, my ears buzzing, my body numb. The days that followed felt like moving through fog. Planning a funeral at 34 wasn't something I ever imagined. I picked out caskets instead of curtains, flowers instead of fabrics. People came, people hugged me, people said all the wrong things. "He's in a better place. At least he didn't suffer. You're still young. You'll find love again." None of it mattered. None of it touched the gaping wound inside me. Nights were worse. I'd crawl into bed, instinctively reaching for Adam's warmth, only to meet the cold emptiness of sheets that would never again carry his scent. I'd lie awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps I knew would never return. Through it all, Cassandra was absent. At first, she texted excuses. "Lucas has a fever. I can't leave him. Tyler's working, no babysitter." Always a reason. Always distant. She missed helping with arrangements, skipped the wake entirely. And on the day of the funeral, she arrived late, slinking in at the back like a guest instead of my sister. She kept her eyes down, stayed for barely 20 minutes, and left before the reception even began. People whispered. My mother muttered something about Cassandra being overwhelmed, too emotional to handle death. My father frowned, but said nothing. I told myself not to think about it. Grief does strange things to people. Maybe she just couldn't face it. But in my heart, I knew something wasn't right. Because Cassandra's absence wasn't about grief. It was about guilt. She couldn't look me in the eye because she knew. She knew what she was hiding. I didn't realize it then, of course. Back then, I was too hollow to suspect. Too shattered to question why my only sister seemed almost relieved to fade into the background. It wasn't until Lucas's first birthday, 1 week after I lowered Adam into the ground, that her true intentions came crashing into the light. That party should have been about balloons and laughter, about celebrating a child's first year. Instead, it became the stage for Cassandra's betrayal. Standing there in her living room, surrounded by family and friends, she clinked her glass and announced with theatrical gravity, "Lucas is Adam's son. And according to Adam's will, I'm entitled to half of Bridget's $800,000 house." The words didn't just cut through me. They split the room in half. Gasps. Stares. Whispers. And me? I didn't crumble. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her out of her own house, though God knows I wanted to. I smiled, because grief had already carved me hollow, and betrayal was just another knife in the collection. But more than that, because Cassandra thought she had the upper hand. She thought she was clever. She thought her little piece of paper, that so-called will, would tear my life apart. What she didn't know was that Adam had already seen her for who she was. And what she really didn't know was that the trap she was setting was going to snap shut on her instead. Cassandra held the paper aloft like a trophy, chin tilted, eyes glittering with triumph. "According to Adam's will," she said slowly, savoring each word, "I am entitled to half of Bridget's $800,000 house. For Lucas." Every syllable landed like a gavel. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips. My father's jaw flexed, a tiny tick he couldn't hide when he was furious and trying not to show it. And yet, all eyes slid to me. The widow in a room suddenly turned courtroom. I met Cassandra's gaze and smiled. Not widely, just enough for her to see that something in me wasn't breaking. Confusion flickered across her face. That wasn't how I was supposed to react. I was supposed to tremble, to cry, to plead for mercy. "May I see it?" I asked, my voice even. She hesitated, then strode forward, handing me the folded document with a dramatic flourish. Lucas fussed on her hip. She rocked him absent-mindedly, eyes never leaving my face. The paper was heavy, the kind lawyers favor when they want words to feel like stone. Last will and testament of Adam James Sullivan. The signature at the bottom looked like his at first glance, a confident sweep, that little hook on the J. But someone who loved that handwriting would notice the stiffness. The way the ink didn't sink into the page at the same points. The way the pressure hesitated at the curve of the S. I skimmed. Clauses. Bequests. And there it was, under a section labeled Specific Devices. To Cassandra Morris, for the benefit of Lucas, my biological son. 1/2 interest in the real property located at 17 Acorn Street, Boston, Massachusetts, currently valued at $800,000. The phrasing was wrong. Adam never wrote like that. Adam was precise. He would have said my interest in the residence, not anchored to a fluctuating valuation. And Adam never called Cassandra by her full name in anything legal or casual. He always called her Cass, not out of affection, but because he believed in keeping things simple. Lawyers do that when it matters. I looked up, folding the document carefully. "Where did you get this?" "From Adam," she replied, her voice soft, almost pitying. "He didn't want to hurt you. He wanted to make sure his son was taken care of." She let the word son linger like perfume. "He asked me to wait until after the funeral." The room buzzed with whispers. I held her gaze. "Then I suppose you won't mind if I verify it." Her smile faltered. "Verify what?" "The notary, the witnesses, the date, the registry. Whether a later will supersedes this one." I handed the paper back, gentle as if returning something sacred. "You understand." Something mean flashed in her eyes. Then, quickly, she smoothed it over with a wounded pout. "I understand grief makes people defensive. Grief makes people careful," I said. "It keeps them from making mistakes." That was when my mother stepped in, voice trembling. "Maybe we should all sit down. Give Bridget some time." And I did. I set the gift down, kissed my mother's cheek, and walked out with my spine straight, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I got in my car, closed the door, and for the first time that day, I let out a laugh. A small, breathless, incredulous laugh that sounded like steam escaping a kettle. Because Cassandra had just shown me her weapon, and I knew exactly where my armor was. Back in the Beacon Hill house, The air held Adam the way a sweater holds a scent. I hung my coat, set my purse on the entry table, and crossed the hallway to his study. The room we had renovated together, dark walnut shelves and a desk he'd insisted on buying from a retired judge. Adam said the desk knew how to keep secrets. At the time, I'd laughed. Now, I wasn't so sure. I unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside, in an envelope sealed with a plain strip of tape, was his handwriting. For Bridget, if anything happens. I had found it 2 days after the funeral and hadn't had the courage to open it yet. I'd traced his letters with my fingertips a dozen times, the ache too fresh to break the seal. But now, with Cassandra's paper still warm in my memory, I peeled the tape carefully and slid out a letter and a small USB drive. B. The letter began. If you're reading this, I'm not there to hold your hand through it, so I'll do the next best thing. I'll put my hand on your back, gently, and steer you forward. I sat on his leather chair, the letter trembling. I didn't want to worry you. I believed it would blow over. But 3 months ago, Cassandra tried to pull me aside at our parents' anniversary dinner and told me Lucas might be mine. She was nervous. I was cold. I told her that was impossible. You know why? The tests. Years of trying taught us more science than we ever wanted. If Lucas were mine, it could only have happened through IVF, and we were there for every attempt. There is no mathematical universe in which it happened by accident. My breath hitched. The clinic had told us, clinically compassionately, that the odds were near zero for us, not just me. We never told our family's details, only the outcome. Cassandra wouldn't have known that. She ran on rumor and audacity. She backed off. I thought it was over, but then she started texting. Then Tyler called. He asked me to do the right thing. He's not a subtle man. I told him if there was a question, he could petition the court for a paternity test. He swore, hung up. The next morning, my office manager said someone asked about notarization procedures, specifically for wills. We don't do that in-house. It stuck with me. My fingers tightened on the page. So I did 2 things, he wrote. First, I updated my estate plan. You'll find the original with Hal at the firm and a duplicate in the safe deposit box. It's a pour-over will into the Sullivan Family Trust. You are the sole beneficiary, trustee, and successor trustee. There's also a small education fund, $10,000, for any child proven to be mine by court-ordered DNA, with proper chain of custody. I added a no-contest clause. Anyone who challenges the trust without probable cause for paternity gets $1 and pays legal fees. Hal will walk you through it. I exhaled, a sound part sob, part relief. Adam, meticulous even in the shadow of betrayal. Adam, still protecting me. Second, the letter continued. I asked Hal to look into something for me. The notary Cassandra used for a draft she tried to show me, a Mary Whitmore, hasn't had an active commission for years. Hal said if she comes back with a final will, it would likely lean on outdated seals or bad witnesses. The kind of mistake amateurs make. I am not accusing her. I'm preparing you. Amateurs. Cassandra playing with fire and calling it perfume. I set the letter down and slotted the USB into Adam's desktop. A single folder opened. For Bridget, evidence. Inside were screenshots, text messages from Cassandra, one-liners laced with desperation, Tyler's crude demands, a photo of a napkin where Cassandra had scrawled, half house like a prize. There was also a PDF, will_template_ do not use, PDF. I clicked it open, a generic form downloaded from some legal site, with placeholders where a name should go. One line jumped out, specific devise of 1/2 of residence to Cassandra Morris for benefit of biological child, Lucas. The same clumsy phrasing I just read on the document she waved at the party. She hadn't even hired a real attorney. She'd filled in a template that blurted out numbers and addresses like price tags and hoped the weight of paper would do the rest. Adam, I whispered, tears slipping down my cheeks. You brilliant, careful man. I wiped my face, took photos of the letter, the drive contents, everything. Then I called Hal. He answered on the second ring, voice steady, as if he'd been expecting this. Bridget. Did Adam really? Yes, Hal said gently. Your husband overprepared. It's all in motion. The trust supersedes any stray paper someone waves at you. The will in my office has 2 disinterested witnesses and a notary with an active commission. It was recorded by protocol. If they try probate with a forgery, we'll meet them there. What about paternity? The word tasted bitter. That's up to them, he said. If someone asserts paternity, the court can order a DNA test. But remember what the clinic told you. And remember Adam's clause. If they push without cause, they pay. I thanked him, voice cracking, and hung up. Then I wrote one message to Cassandra. I've reviewed your paper. Please send me the original. My attorney will contact you by tomorrow. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. No need to get lawyers involved, she replied. Let's just be fair. Fair. Like the time she borrowed my favorite dress and spilled wine on it, then smiled like it was my fault the glass tipped. Like the time she sobbed about rent and forgot to pay me back. Like the way she had calculated the value of my marriage in square feet. I insist, I typed. This is what Adam wanted. If she only knew. That night, I walked through the house touching the surfaces Adam had loved. The mantle we stripped and stained ourselves. The floorboard that always complained beneath our bedroom window. The porch swing where he told me, brokenhearted, that we could still have a beautiful life. Help me finish this. I whispered to the air that felt like him. Help me end it, because the truth was no longer a ghost. It had a shape now. A trust, a letter, a thumb drive of receipts, a lawyer ready to unsheath the law like a clean, sharp blade. Cassandra thought she'd trapped me with a piece of paper and a lie dressed like a miracle. But Adam had left me something stronger than paper. He'd left me a map out of the maze and a match. And I was done walking in the dark. The morning after Cassandra's performance at Lucas's birthday, I woke with a fire in my chest I hadn't felt since Adam died. It wasn't grief this time. It was purpose. Grief had left me hollow, a shell drifting through routines. But now? Now I had something to anchor me again. Cassandra thought she'd written my ending, but Adam, even in death, had written my counterstrike. I started with Hal. My husband's old law partner was meticulous, sharp as a scalpel, and utterly unshakable. Sitting across from him in his office, surrounded by shelves stacked with leather-bound casebooks, I slid Cassandra's so-called will across the polished desk. He didn't even put on his glasses before shaking his head. This is amateur hour, he muttered. Wrong phrasing, no chain of custody, no official registry. The notary stamp expired 5 years ago. A judge would laugh this out of probate in 5 minutes. I blinked. Expired? Look here. He pointed to the smudged circle on the bottom of the page. Mary Whitmore. Commission ended 2017. Cassandra either found old stationery or doctored the seal. Either way, fraud. The word echoed in my chest. Fraud. Not mistake. Not misunderstanding. Fraud. Hal leaned back, fingers steepled. Adam told me this might happen. He was careful. He put everything into a trust, ironclad. You're the sole trustee. Cassandra has no claim. Relief washed over me, but anger followed fast behind. Because Cassandra hadn't just been sloppy, she had been deliberate. She'd orchestrated this spectacle at her son's first birthday, counting on my grief to silence me, to make me too weak to fight back. She didn't know me at all. Hal tapped his pen on the desk. I recommend 2 things. First, we lock down Adam's assets, notify the bank, secure the deed, put the trust front and center in county records. Second, he paused, lowering his voice. We get a private investigator. Someone who can dig into Cassandra's finances, her movements, her associates. Fraud is one thing, but if she's claiming Adam as Lucas's father, he let the sentence trail off. I didn't need him to finish. If Cassandra was bold enough to forge a will, she was bold enough to lie about paternity. So we called in Daniel Hayes. Daniel was not the trench coat, fedora type of PI you see in movies. He was quiet, observant, the kind of man who could sit in a coffee shop for hours without being noticed. His specialty was paper trails. People think lies live in words, he told me during our first meeting. But lies live in receipts, in timestamps, in signatures. Paper doesn't lie. I gave him everything. The USB Adam left, Cassandra's forged will, her texts, even old photos. He studied them with the detached focus of a surgeon. This, he said, tapping the forged will, wasn't drafted by a lawyer. Whoever wrote it pulled it off a template site, filled in blanks, and printed it on heavy bond to make it look official. Classic amateur con. He pulled up the file Adam had saved, the Do Not Use PDF. And this is her draft, probably saved on her laptop. If I get access to her metadata, I can prove she authored it. I frowned. How would you even do that? Daniel smiled faintly. People think deleting erases evidence. It doesn't. Computers remember. Phones remember. The cloud remembers. I shivered. Cassandra thought she was clever, but she'd never been careful. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel's updates came in steady drips. Cassandra's bank account overdrawn twice. Tyler's credit cards maxed out. A payday loan in her name. Rent overdue. Desperation on paper. Then came the bombshell. Daniel slid a manila folder across the diner table during one of our meetings. Inside were surveillance photos. Cassandra and Tyler in a downtown copy shop, hovering over a computer terminal. Cassandra clutching a flash drive. Tyler printing, feeding paper into a machine. And there, in one frame, Tyler pressing a handheld notary stamp onto the corner of a page. Except the stamp didn't match. The handle was cheap plastic, the kind sold on online marketplaces with custom text options. Not state-issued. Not legal. Just a toy dressed like authority. My stomach turned. They're sloppy, Daniel said, sipping his coffee. That's good for us. Sloppy means traceable. I'll get the receipt from the print shop, tie the timestamp to their debit card. Chain of evidence will hold. Chain of evidence. Fraud. Words that turned my grief into fury, my fury into resolve. That night, I sat at Adam's desk again, letter in my lap. You knew, I whispered to him. You knew she'd try to twist our lives, and you still found a way to protect me. It was then I noticed something I hadn't before, a postscript at the bottom of his letter, in smaller handwriting. P.S. If she tries this, remember, the truth isn't something you beg people to believe. The truth is a weapon. Wield it. And I would. The next family gathering came sooner than I expected. My parents invited us all for Sunday dinner, hoping to stitch some sense of normalcy back into our unraveling family. Cassandra arrived in heels and a new dress she could not possibly afford, Tyler swaggering behind her like a dog on parade. When dessert was served, Cassandra casually mentioned she was consulting a probate attorney. It's really just a formality, she said, spooning cheesecake with exaggerated grace. Adam's will is clear. Lucas deserves his inheritance. I set down my fork. Calm. Steady. Actually, Cass, it's not clear at all. She smirked. It's on paper. Signed. Signed with an expired notary seal. I countered, my voice carrying across the table. From a woman who hasn't been licensed since 2017. Her spoon clattered. What? And printed at a copy shop. I continued, sliding Daniel's photos onto the table like playing cards. Time-stamped. Witnessed. Paid for with your debit card. Tyler even used a fake notary stamp. Not very subtle. The room went silent. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand shook as she covered her mouth. Tyler cursed under his breath. Cassandra's lips parted, but no sound came out. I leaned forward. Adam updated his estate plan. He left everything in a trust. I'm the sole trustee. Your paper means nothing. And if you try to push it in court, you'll be fighting fraud charges on top of losing the case. For once in her life, Cassandra had no comeback. I gathered the photos, tucked them back into the folder, and rose from the table. My voice was calm, but my hands shook with adrenaline. Adam left me a life to protect. You won't take that from me. Not with lies. Not ever. And then I walked out, leaving her in the wreckage of her own scheme. That night, for the first time since Adam died, I slept through until morning. No tossing, no tears. just peace. Because the war Cassandra thought she'd started, Adam had already ended it. But I wasn't done.
Not yet.
Because exposing the forgery was only half the battle. Revenge, true revenge, meant ensuring Cassandra could never try something like this again. And I had just the plan. When you shine a light into darkness, the shadows scatter. Cassandra thought she had spun a perfect web, but lies unravel faster than silk when pulled from the right thread. Daniel, the investigator, didn't stop with the forged will. He dug deeper. And the deeper he dug, the uglier it became. First came the money trail. Cassandra's accounts showed a pattern of desperation. Payday loans stacking on each other. Credit cards maxed out. Tyler's bar shifts barely covering rent. Their landlord had filed 2 warnings for late payment. They weren't just struggling. They were drowning. And that's when it clicked for me. Cassandra's stunt with Adams wasn't about family. It wasn't about Lucas's future. It was about survival, her survival. She wanted half my house not because she cared about Adam's memory, but because she needed cash fast. Daniel found more. Tyler had a record. Nothing huge, but enough. Disorderly conduct, drunk and disorderly, an old DUI. Cassandra had hidden it from our parents, dressing him up as a misunderstood rebel. But on paper, he looked less like a rebel and more like a man one bad decision away from jail. Then came the texts. Daniel traced Cassandra's phone history. With a court order pending, he couldn't access everything, but what he found through backups was enough. Screenshots of messages between her and Tyler. "We need the money, Ty. That house is the only way. This is risky, Cass. Do you want to keep living like this? Adam owed me anyway. Lucas is his. We deserve it. Then why forge the will? If it's true, DNA will prove it. Because I don't want to wait months. Courts are slow. Bridget is weak. We can corner her now." I stared at those words, ball rising in my throat.
Weak.
That was what she thought I was. That was what they both thought. That grief had broken me so completely, I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. But the crack that widened into a chasm wasn't financial, and it wasn't legal. It was personal. Daniel called one night, his voice low but edged with excitement. "Tyler's slipping," he said. "He's talking to people. Bartenders hear everything. He's bragging that he helped Cassandra play lawyer. He even hinted that Lucas might not be Adams after all." I froze. What did he say exactly? Daniel read his notes. Cass just needed a payday. Lucas could have been Adams, could have been mine, could have been anyone's. Doesn't matter, money's money. The words stabbed deeper than I expected. Poor Lucas. An innocent child, used as leverage in Cassandra's greed. His father a question mark. His life already stained by lies. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Get me proof," I whispered. And Daniel did. Within days, he had recordings. Tyler, drunk after a late shift, spilling secrets to a coworker. How Cassandra pressured him into helping forge documents. How she planned to bleed Bridget slowly. How Lucas was a pawn. Every word felt like nails sealing Cassandra's coffin. But I didn't want whispers. I wanted thunder. Proof so undeniable that when the storm broke, everyone, my parents, our relatives, even Cassandra herself, would see her for what she was. So Daniel arranged the final piece. A DNA test. Quiet, careful, legal. He collected a stray strand of Lucas's hair from a birthday photo frame Cassandra had posted online, a lock taped inside as a keepsake. It was enough. The lab results came back conclusive. Adam was not Lucas's father. I stared at the report, hands trembling, a mix of relief and rage coursing through me. Relief that Adam had never betrayed me. Rage that Cassandra had stood in front of our family, in front of me, waving a forged will and claiming a lie so bold it could have destroyed everything. It was time. The night of the confrontation, my parents invited us again, an attempt to clear the air. They thought it would be another tense dinner, full of sighs and side glances. They didn't know I was walking in with evidence that would shatter the facade forever. Cassandra arrived late, as always, her heels clicking against the tile. Lucas balanced on her hip. She looked smug, as though nothing could touch her. Tyler trailed behind, looking less confident than usual, his eyes darting to the floor. We ate in silence at first. My parents tried to stir conversation, but the tension hung thick. Finally, Cassandra dabbed her lips with her napkin and said sweetly, "I've spoken with an attorney. Probate will be straightforward. It'll be easier if Bridget doesn't fight." I set down my glass and looked her in the eye.
Calm.
Controlled. "Cass," I said evenly, "you've been lying.
To me.
To our parents. To everyone." She blinked, thrown off. "Excuse me?" I pulled out the folder Daniel had prepared. Photos, receipts, print shop timestamps, recordings transcribed word for word. I spread them across the table like cards in a game I had already won. "This is your forgery. This is Tyler buying the fake stamp. This is you at the copy shop. These are your texts." I tapped the page where her words screamed back at her. "Bridget is weak." Her face drained of color. You invaded my privacy." I cut her off. "And this," I said, sliding the DNA results across, "is proof that Adam was not Lucas's father." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. My father pushed back his chair, eyes blazing with fury I had never seen before. Tyler swore under his breath, but Cassandra, she just sat frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "You used your son as a weapon," I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with fury. "You forged documents. You tried to steal from me, from Adam's memory. And for what? Money you would have burned through in a year?" Cassandra's eyes filled with tears, but not the kind born from remorse. They were the tears of someone caught, cornered, exposed. My father spoke, his voice sharp. "Cassandra, how could you? After everything Bridget has been through after Adam." His words broke. For once in her life, Cassandra had no defense. I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. "This isn't over," I told her quietly. "The lawyer will be in touch. But your lies? They're finished." And with that, I stood, leaving her collapsed in her chair, the weight of her own schemes finally pressing down. That night, as I drove back to Beacon Hill, the city lights reflecting off the windshield, I felt Adam with me. In every careful plan, every safeguard he left behind, every word he had written to prepare me for this war. Cassandra's lies had cracked. And when lies crack, the whole house comes tumbling down. But I wasn't done. The final act still waited, the one where revenge became justice. And I was ready. Some wars end in whispers. Ours ended under fluorescent courthouse lights. The probate hearing room was smaller than I expected. Beige walls, tidy rows of chairs, a raised bench where justice would either breathe or choke. I arrived flanked by Hal, my attorney, and Daniel, the investigator whose quiet diligence had turned smoke into flames. My parents sat behind us, pale but resolute. I could feel my mother's hand trembling on my shoulder before I stood. Cassandra swept in 10 minutes late, all perfume and poise, wearing a cream suit that looked expensive and a smile that looked borrowed. Tyler trailed behind, sunglasses perched on his head indoors, jaw tight. A thin man with a shiny briefcase, her probate lawyer, took the seat beside her, riffling papers with theatrical purpose. When the clerk called our case, Cassandra's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter. The decedent, Adam James Sullivan, executed a will leaving a one-half interest in his Beacon Hill residence to my client, Ms. Cassandra Morris, for the benefit of his biological son." He said it as if truth could be conjured by confidence. Hal rose, calm as a surgeon. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss. The supposed will is facially invalid and superseded by a properly executed pour-over will and trust. We'll address the fraud in a moment." Cassandra flinched at the word. The judge, gray hair, measured eyes, adjusted her glasses. "Let's start with the document." Ms. Morris's counsel, approach. They handed up the paper Cassandra had so triumphantly waved at the party. The judge scanned it, expression unreadable. "Counsel," she said, "your notary's commission appears expired. 5 years ago." A flush crept up Cassandra's neck. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Merely a clerical. Not in my courtroom. The judge cut in. Either a notary is commissioned or they are not. Continue. Hal moved with the rhythm of someone who trusted the facts. He produced Adam's real will, the one executed through the firm, bearing the crisp signatures of 2 disinterested witnesses, a valid notary seal, and the recording log. He produced the Sullivan family trust documents. I was trustee, sole beneficiary, successor trustee. A small education clause awaited any child legally proved to be Adam's. And, Hal added, voice steady, a no-contest clause assigning fees to any party who challenges without probable cause. The judge glanced at Cassandra's table. Ms. Morris? Her lawyer tried to pivot, but Hal was already lining up the next strike. Daniel took the stand. State your name and occupation. Daniel Hayes, licensed private investigator. He kept it simple. The copy shop timestamps. The receipt tied to Cassandra's debit card. The surveillance photos of Tyler pressing a fake stamp onto the page. The online marketplace listing that sold that exact novelty notary stamp shipped to Tyler's address 2 days prior. The lab's chain of custody report on those photos and receipts. Mr. Hayes, Hal asked, in your professional opinion, was this document produced lawfully? No, Daniel replied. It was manufactured to look lawful. Cassandra's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Then Hal called the forensic document examiner, a woman with calm eyes and the patience of granite. She reviewed the signature mechanics, pressure hesitations, inconsistent pen flow, a photocopied seal. This is not the same hand, she concluded. It is an imitation. Objection. Cassandra's attorney tried again. Overruled. The judge said, her tone cooling. I kept my breathing measured, hands folded. The hardest part was still to come. Hal nodded to me. Miss Sullivan, please take the stand. I swore in, palm steady. Mrs. Sullivan, Hal said, before his death, did Adam communicate concerns about potential fraud related to his estate? Yes, I said. He left me a letter and a USB drive. He'd anticipated this. He updated his will and trust to protect his estate and documented early attempts to push him into acknowledging paternity outside lawful channels. We entered the letter excerpt into evidence, carefully, without wrenching open my grief more than necessary. The judge read silently. Something softened in her gaze, not pity, but respect for preparation in the face of fear. Then Hal slid a sealed envelope to the clerk. Your Honor, as to the paternity claim, we submit a legally obtained DNA analysis with chain of custody demonstrating Adam Sullivan is not the biological father of Lucas. The room seemed to inhale at once. Cassandra lurched up. You had no right. The judge's gavel struck. Sit down, Ms. Morris. Her lawyer's confidence bled out of him. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on knees, thinking hard. I watched the exact moment calculation replace bravado. Your Honor, he blurted, standing without being called. I have something to say. His lawyer tugged his sleeve. Tyler shook him off. I helped stamp that paper. Cass said we needed the money. She said Lucas, she said it could be Adam's, but she didn't know. It was her idea. Cassandra whipped toward him, eyes wild. You liar. Enough, the judge snapped. She turned to the clerk. Note for the record. Potential admissions related to fraud. Bailiff, keep order. Silence dropped like a curtain. Hal faced the bench. Your Honor, we move to dismiss the petition with prejudice, to refer the fraudulent instrument to the district attorney for review, and to award costs to the trust under the no contest and fee-shifting clauses. Cassandra's lawyer finally found his voice. We request time to confer. You should have conferred before filing, the judge said. She signed, swift and certain. Petition dismissed with prejudice. Costs awarded to the Sullivan Family Trust. The document will be forwarded to the DA's office for potential criminal investigation. Ms. Morris, you are advised to seek separate counsel. The gavel fell. It didn't sound like wood on wood. It sounded like a door slamming shut on every lie she told. Outside the courthouse, the January wind cut through my coat, but I felt warmed from the inside out. My parents hugged me, my father's eyes bright with unshed tears, my mother whispering, "He protected you, and you honored him." Cassandra stood a few yards away, mascara streaking, her lawyer hissing into her ear. Tyler had already peeled off, choosing survival over loyalty. For once, she wasn't the center of the room. She was a cautionary tale on the periphery. I walked over, not out of triumph, but finality. "This ends here," I said. "You won't step foot on my property. You won't contact me. Any further harassment will get a restraining order." She opened her mouth, closed it again. The wind lifted a strand of her hair. For an instant, she looked small, a girl who'd never learned that love isn't a scoreboard. "Lucas deserves better than your schemes," I added softly. "I hope you figure that out." I left her there, holding a future she'd cracked with her own hands. That night, as I set the watercolor of the Boston skyline back on the mantel, I felt Adam's letter in my pocket like a pulse. Not a memory, a map. I'd followed it to the edge of the storm. All that remained was the rebuilding. People think revenge is loud. Plate shattering, doors slamming, a scream that rattles the chandelier. Real revenge is quiet. It's a ledger balanced. It's a boundary held. It's consequences that arrive like the morning. Inevitable. The DA's office called within 2 weeks. They'd reviewed the file. The fake notary stamp. The expired commission. The surveillance. The metadata tying Cassandra's draft to her laptop. Tyler's off-the-cuff confession. They didn't need my anger. They had facts. 2 months later, Cassandra accepted a plea. Attempted fraud, uttering a forged instrument, and conspiracy. Reduced in exchange for cooperation and restitution to the Trust for Legal Fees. Probation, community service, mandatory financial counseling. She didn't go to prison, and I didn't ask for it. I wanted accountability, not spectacle. I wanted her to learn, not rot. Tyler flipped early. His deal was thinner, testimony for leniency. Last I heard, he left town, the way people do when their exits catch up with them. My parents began the long, aching work of learning boundaries with their youngest. They stopped paying emergency bills that were never emergencies. They stopped treating chaos as a personality. For the first time, they told her no, and meant it. As for Lucas, the only innocent in the blast radius, I drew a line the size of my heart. I would not be his mother. That wound was its own river. But when my mother asked if she could bring him by sometimes, just for an hour in the garden, I said yes. The condition was non-negotiable. Cassandra would not come along. When he toddled through the time and giggled at bumblebees, the ache that lived beneath my ribs softened. Love can hold two truths at once. I could protect myself and still be gentle with a child who never chose any of this. I fortified the house, not with locks and cameras, with purpose. I turned Adam's study into a small foundation office, just as we'd whispered about on late nights when dreams outpaced budgets. We called it the Harbor Light Fund, grants for couples navigating infertility, and later a small awareness program for aneurysm screening at community clinics. Adam had believed in giving more than he took. I made sure that didn't die with him. Work came back like spring after a long winter. Clients returned. I redesigned a brownstone for a widower who preferred the light different now, softer at dusk, sparing in the mornings. We didn't talk about loss. We lived around it, choosing chairs and fabrics that respected the ghost without inviting it to dinner. Sometimes, after a late meeting, I'd stand on the porch swing with a mug between my palms and read Adam's letter again, tracing the postscript he left for me. The truth isn't something you beg people to believe. The truth is a weapon. Wield it. I wielded it, and then I put it down. Because revenge was never the end of my story. Justice was the line. Peace would be the rest. One evening, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was the napkin, the ridiculous one Cassandra had once scrawled, "Half house," across like a prize. No note, just the evidence of a life I no longer had to defend. I took it to the fireplace, lit a match, and watched the ink curl into flame. When the last edge went to ash, the room felt larger. No, not larger, mine. On the anniversary of the charity auction where Adam and I met, I took the watercolor to the harbor and held it up against the real skyline, oranges bleeding into purple, city lights arriving like 1,000 small yes. I didn't say goodbye to him. Goodbyes are for doors that close. What I said was thank you. Thank you for preparing the path, for loving me enough to anticipate the storm, for trusting me to walk through it alone and come out whole. Family can be a sanctuary or a battlefield. Mine had been both. I couldn't change the terrain I was born to, but I could choose where to build. I chose here. A house with good bones and hard-won peace. A life that honors what was and welcomes what will be. If you're hearing this and your own house is shaking, if betrayal is banging at your door, listen to me. You are not weak for surviving. You are not petty for wanting justice. You are not alone. I turned off the porch light and let the stars do their work. A year later, the Beacon Hill Garden is loud with bees. The foundation has funded its 20th grant. My parents bring Lucas on Sundays. He knows where the strawberries hide. Sometimes he asks about the man in the photos. I tell him, that's Adam. He loved deeply. He protected well. It's enough for now. Cassandra keeps her distance. Probation has a way of staking fences even courts can't see. We communicate through lawyers when it's necessary. Mostly it isn't. I kept Adam's desk. I replaced the chair. I painted the room a shade of harbor gray you only notice right after rain. When clients ask the color's name, I smile. Resilience. If family drama hits close to home, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're carrying a story like mine, betrayal, grief, and the long walk back to yourself, share only what you want. Keep what is yours. The truth is a weapon, yes. But in the right hands, it's also a lantern. I'm Bridget. I survived the storm. And I'm building a life that refuses to drown.